So you want to know what Armored Core is really about, yeah? Everyone's talking about it now. Press, old fans, new fans, haters, enjoyers, but I assure you this wasn't the case just a few months ago. If you're wondering, oh, From Software makes good games, let me check this out. Then let me make this process easier for you. But SG, we are at the 6th game, I'm sure it can't be that hard to follow, you say. Well, you'd be surprised at how much there is to cover, and frankly we don't need to go too far down the rabbit hole to paint the whole picture. Let's start by defining what the core guiding principles of the series are, no pun intended. Now, before getting into any of these, let's just quickly summarize what the setting is and what you're actually going to be doing while playing Armored Core. There are about 16 main entries in the series so far. Most of these can be grouped into different generations, usually distinguished by a reboot of the timeline, big changes in gameplay direction and hardware jumps. So if we organize it all and bunch it together in a neat little grouping we get this. Now why is this important? It isn't, but I wanted to share.
You're a fiend.
It is, what it is. From AC1 through AC Last Raven, that is from Generation 1 until Generation 3.5, the games have pretty much remained the same at a fundamental and philosophical level. Humanity has been forced to live in underground megastructures due to the aftermath of some sort of apocalyptic war or conflict, depending on the timeline. Even in this context, huge corporations seek to control and leverage their power to further their ambitions, commonly at the expense of human lives. You're thrown into this dystopian, corporate-ruled world in the shoes of a Raven, an Armored Core pilot, and you're expected to pretty much sort your shit out while potentially altering, or not, the whole course of human history in the process. As a Raven, you'll work as a mercenary for these various corporate conglomerates and earn credits according to your performance in each mission. With these credits you'll be able to purchase a whole assortment of parts to modularly customize your mech and tailor it exactly to your playstyle and preferences, in turn allowing you to complete more difficult jobs and so on. From AC4 through Verdict Day, the equivalent of Generation 4 until Generation 5, the games share the same timeline. Overpopulation has led to massive societal unrest and the degradation of the Earth's environment, to a point where it's on the verge of becoming uninhabitable. Governmental bodies start losing control over the people, and conflicts arise out of the strife and desperation caused by the collapse of the global supply chain. Shit happens, and Armored Cores are leveraged as means of quelling these conflicts and enforcing the corporation's shady tactics to rise to power and substituting failed governments as the next rulers of humanity. In Armored Core 6, humanity has developed interstellar travel and began colonizing other planets. One of these, called Rubicon 3, houses a substance called coral, which was discovered to be extremely efficient as an energy source and information conduit. Hailed as the next big important leap in technological advancement, coral was highly sought after. Unfortunately, it seems it also goes big boom, and so it causes a massive catastrophe named the Fires of Ibis, engulfing Rubicon 3 in flames, consuming all known reserves of coral and leaving behind an entirely contaminated planet. Sometime later, trace amounts of coral are detected yet again, prompting corporations to flock to the planet in the hopes of exploiting the resource and overturning native sovereignty.
Interesting. Can we skip this section?
Okay, what are Armored Cores? Glad you asked. ACs are basically an evolution of muscle tracers, which are humanoid man multi-purpose machines, initially built for aid in construction tasks. They eventually outgrew their intended purpose and were adapted for military activities, and later superseded by Armored Cores.
Right, so these games are basically Gran Turismo for mecha fans.
Yeah, it's basically that. From here on out, each game is either a direct sequel within a given timeline, or it introduces a new timeline via reboot, save a few offshoot spin-offs.
You're saving all that for another video, aren't you?
Precisely. Anyway, that's how most of the plot starts out for the majority of the titles, given a few different perspectives and background details are changed, but it won't stray far from that. Gameplay-wise, Armored Core can be broadly defined as a third-person shooter mixed with vehicle combat? I don't really know. It's very much its own thing, to be honest.
Isn't it a like?
No, it's not a like, you silly thing. You get into the mech, you have an amazing degree of freedom when it comes to 3D mobility, and you basically aim and shoot at your targets while evading incoming fire. Sounds simple? It's not. But this is an introduction, not an in-depth tutorial, so bear with me. The thread that connects it all together is the elegant interplay between narrative, action gameplay, and limitless customization. But you don't sound very convinced just yet, so let's actually take a good look at the 4 principles shown earlier. Feelings.
Hold up, the fuck are you on about?
Just let me get my point across, Abby. You might not acknowledge or even realize it, but one of the key factors when it comes to retaining engagement and committing your attention to something, be it participating in an activity, playing a game, or listening to a song, is how emotionally invested you become in said thing. You could say it's the vibe or whatever you call it. Fact is, you need to feel drawn into what you're engaging with to be able to experience it uniquely.
Why are you bringing this up?
Because, Abby, Armored Core can very easily grab you by the 9 balls if you let it. That means generally speaking the game does a very good job at pulling you into its world. Chances are, if you're someone who likes sci-fi, brutalism, industrial post-apocalyptic settings, cyberpunk and morally ambiguous explorations of themes such as war, poverty, corporate exploitation and self-servingness, then you'll love Armored Core. Role-playing as a mercenary is a really common trope in video games, but it's not that often that theme is explored through the lens of someone piloting a giant piece of machinery, whose whole purpose is the death and destruction of everything around it. In these games you are paid to commit horrible acts of terrorism and further the interest of those who effectively own you, the highest bidders. You don't question any of it. In fact, your best option is, quite frankly, trying to juggle the lesser of multiple evils. You'll feel hopeless, anxious, sometimes scared and creeped out, but almost paradoxically high on the satisfaction of blowing shit up. This dichotomy is what forms the emotional hook of the series, how despite knowing you're mindlessly completing horrible task after horrible task, you still yearn for the reward that comes from both piloting and building your own mech, and the satisfaction that overcoming some of these challenges provides. Obviously not everyone will click with the themes that are presented in these games, and for sure, more traditionally fantasy settings are plenty more popular than high-tech universes. But feelings aren't just evoked through storylines, world building and settings, they can also be stoked by gameplay. Some games are made so that the player can go on exciting adventures across beautiful landscapes, defeating mythical creatures and meeting a whole cast of interesting well-fleshed out characters along the way. Some expect you to cooperate with others to take down powerful foes, and some invert the common power fantasy progression scale by having you best threats that are clearly stronger than you are, putting your ingenuity, cunning and persistence to the test. Armored Core is none of that shit. Everything sucks, everything is out to exploit or kill you and you need to make some money to afford staying alive. You get into your big hulking pile of parts and you take on missions to turn some profit. You're not playing as the mech, you're playing as the pilot of the mech. If you're an inexperienced Raven, you will fail and you will die, it's that simple. If you somehow don't perish, you'll have to pay for the operation costs of your machine. I know, lovely. All you'll see are other machines of war, advanced lab prototypes and occasionally civilian transportation. Large megastructures, abandoned facilities, desolate wastelands, artificial structures to no end. You'll get accustomed to the glorious sound of your machine gun firing dozens of rounds per second, the tantalizing glow of your booster exhaust, and the excruciatingly addicting feeling of going so fast your AC becomes a mere blip of pixels on the screen. Like any other kind of pilot, you'll become one with your craft, more confident and bold. You'll expand your mechanical skill ceiling and with it endless possibilities are unlocked. That mission that took you 3 retries to beat the first time around will be blazed through on your second playthrough, and believe me you will beat any of these games more than once. It's not that your AC becomes stronger, it's you, that matures into a seasoned veteran. That's the type of game this is. Eventually you'll become so good at your job, any old pile of junk will do. And that's where the emotional connections play their part. You get attached to your performance, hooked on how to overcome barriers and keen on discovering what lies beyond the next objective. What will push you to evaluate your strategy, and decide if it's time for a shakeup. The moments you barely scrape by with just a minimal amount of health left, or when you run out of ammo right before the last encounter. Forming your own narratives within the game is just as crucial as it is a reality in Armored Core. And honestly, it just feels good to play. Each generation has its own unique quirks and considerations, some play very similarly, taking a more grounded slow approach until faster action is required. And some go to the all-out extreme, where it may feel like you're actually playing something along the lines of Ace Combat, flying a glorified fighter jet with legs and arms that can turn instantly on a dime. It's absolutely glorious. Big robots and large explosions are only half of the fun. Have you ever felt the primal desire of building something entirely from scratch and putting it to the test to only realize how much of a shitty job you did? Well fuck, join the club. It's parts and parts and parts and parts galore. You got the shop where you buy your cool oversized shotguns, the decal section where you let your inner Bob Ross rip the fattest, meanest bong.
Whoa, relax boss.
So yeah, basically you get to play around with your own workshop dedicated to turning the default pile of junk AC into the monstrosity of your dreams, for the adequate price of course. Everything here has a price tag. If you want it, you have to buy it. But fear not, the game is balanced around this. In fact, credits and expense reports exist for this very reason. You earn your income, deduct your bad pilot tax and spend your whole profit to deck out your ride. Now that's gaming ravens. While you might initially look at all the flashy explosions and cool set pieces and a lot of footage, it's important to understand this is predominantly a menu-driven experience. The garage is what makes or breaks an Armored Core game, and it takes center stage determining how the real-time action actually performs. Say you build the closest analogous thing to an actual tank. Well, you bet you're going to be slogging around the battlefield absolutely armed to the teeth, stomping everything in your way by sheer brute force. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you might feel like staying highly mobile is your preferred way of playing. Well, join the reverse joint gang, bolt a pulse rifle onto your AC and have fun endlessly circling around all the suckers that dare oppose you. It's this uncompromised focus on intertwining both the action and the assembly of the AC that really makes Armored Core special. There's something to be said about solving encounters before even getting into the job, overcoming the particular obstacles inside said mission, and also keeping in mind how to most efficiently manage your economic issues once it's all done. This intricate dance between considerations bleeds into the final core philosophy of the franchise. Armored Core is rooted in freedom of expression. No matter how you look at it, this is the crux upon which Armored Core is built on. Expression through selecting which missions you want to take as an independent mercenary. Being able to freely choose how to approach completing each deployment. Letting your imagination go wild in the garage, nitpicking and fine-tuning every single aspect of your machine and pilot information. Expression in playstyle and even the way you choose to interpret the messages and teachings the narrative throws at you in such a haphazard, convoluted yet thematically sound and gripping way. Armored Core is a game about mechs, about taking the next job, about exploring what it means to have free will and take responsibility for your actions, about how even surrounded by cold metal structures that stretch for miles, there are still elements of humanity present at any corner: greed, fear, uncertainty, devotion, zealotry, compromise, stagnation. You don't need to have it spelled out for you, because that's not what the games are attempting to go for. They are trying to engage you in a way that forces you to seek out meaning in the things that seem most mundane and taken for granted. It's your choice to make, if you want to pay attention to what's in front of you or not. You have the right, the duty to find that out. As always, stay boosting ravens. If you like my content, make sure to like this video and subscribe to keep up to date with all new releases. Let me know in the comments section, what is Armored Core all about? I'll be playing AC6 for a while now, so there won't be any videos for a little while. Until then, thank you for watching.